movies.
In a world. Hello and welcome to I think this is the seventh. I think I can count right.
Yeah,
Seventh
about that.
episode of the Miskatonic AV Club, Mythos Busters production. I'm Sean, and joining me tonight is the one and only Scott.
Good evening.
And
We've
tonight, guys,
successfully killed all the other hosts.
it's true. The coup has finally worked. Scott, yeah, tonight we have a pact whereby I will be sacrificed to the Elder God so that Scott can ascend to glory, as was
It will
foretold.
be my Dunwich legacy.
Oh, there it is. Solid segue. All right, so we are
Yeah.
talking tonight about the Dunwich legacy. So let's start out with our favorite starting class, them blue bastards, the Guardians. So the Guardian investigator we have in the Dunwich legacy. I think she tends to be kind of a fan favorite. There's a lot of people who have an almost Diana Stanley-esque following or adoration for Zoe Samaras?
Samaras,
Samaras?
I think.
It's
I
Greek, isn't it? Yeah, anyway. She's
I'm
the
the wrong
chef.
person to ask. Yeah.
So she's the chef. Excuse me. She has the believer and hunter traits. She has 4 willpower, 2 intellect, 4 fight, combat. I still can never remember where we landed on that. And 2
It's
agility.
it's combat.
It's combat. Okay.
Yes,
4
because you
combat.
use combat to fight. You don't use
Oh,
fight to fight.
there it is. There it is. Just like you scratch an itch, but you don't itch a scratch.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. And she has the ability reaction. After you become engaged with an enemy, gain 1 resource. Her Elder Sign effect is +1. If this skill is successful during an attack, that attack deals +1 damage. I'm talking about her deck here. Deck size 30. She can take Guardian cards 0 to 5, neutral cards 0 to 5, and up to 5 level 0 cards from any class. And she also has to have your random basic weakness, Zoe's Cross, and Smite the Wicked. So, Scott, do you want to read us Zoe's Cross?
Oh, do I ever? So Zoe's cross, the symbol of righteousness. It's neutral, but obviously it's going in Zoe. It's an asset. It goes in the accessory slot. It's an item and charm. Costs 1, and it has 2 combat pips and a wild pip. Zoe Samaras deck only in reaction. After an enemy becomes engaged with you, exhaust Zoe's cross to spend 1 resource, deal 1 damage to that enemy. So
Okay.
nice. And then we got Smite the Wicked as well. That's her weakness. It's a treachery, a weakness, and a task. Revelation, discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until an enemy is discarded. Attach Smite the Wicked to that enemy, spawn at the location farthest from you. And then forced, when the game ends, if attached enemy is in play, you suffer 1 mental trauma.
All right. So, Zoe.
Well,
Um,
she fights things.
she does. She sure fights things, and she stands against the darkness pretty well. If we kind of assume that's kind of what the default use of your willpower is. Um,
Mhm.
she's a resource engine in kind of a limited way.
Yeah.
Though it is a way that she is going anyway, so it's kind of cool. She's going to be engaging enemies, so why not get some benefit out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that Elder Sign. It doesn't, that's the funny thing, and we talk about this I feel like I talk about this every time I talk about Elder Signs. Like, they're always cool effects,
How
but
often does it happen, right?
right. It's
That's
not, it's
yeah.
not even something I consider when I'm evaluating an investigator, just because it is
I
so
completely agree.
low percentage a thing. Like, it's just a cool crit effect that occasionally does something awesome. The Elder
Yeah.
Sign produces some really cool stories, but it also comes out when you're already up by 3, and it was just,
hmm
getting a clue.
And and I mean, if you pull the Elder Sign while you're not attacking with Zoe, you're doing a willpower test. You're like, oh well, my Elder Sign is just a +1. I think Skids is really the only one where I'm just like Elder Signs for days. I don't care because
Yeah.
you just get money. Um, but yeah, I totally agree. It's a nice advantage though. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's good. But
It is combat math in this game is a little hard sometimes because you're generally trying to figure out, okay, how many actions do I need to spend? What weapons do I have in play? How many health are left? Do I have any
especially
extra
if you're
little
rogue,
pings? Yeah,
succeed by
especially
2 and blah blah blah.
yeah, if you're
But
rogue or if you're Agnes, and then you're kind of like figuring out, okay, when I do forbidden knowledge, blah 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 blah, blah, and you're trying to figure out your
mhm,
damage. Well, you know what? Sometimes you get a pleasant surprise to your math, and you might get to save an action. Other
mhm.
times, it leaves the enemy with 1 damage, and you still have to spend the last charge of your or not charge ammo on your 45. So I don't know. It's cool though.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's nice when it comes up.
Mhm.
Um, so obviously Zoe wants to. She's like it's hunter. Literally is the best trait they could have given her. That's everything she is. She
Yeah.
is proactively engaging enemies, and when she gets her cross out, it's basically like, hey, I
Oh,
engage you, and essentially you just get a free damage. So you forego the resource that you get from her ability and deal the damage, which again, a nice little surprise damage like that, going a positive way in your battle math.
and you
It's
know what?
pretty sweet.
It's that ability with the cross. I mean, I've played Zoe now through 2 Dunwich campaigns, like up to her current. And at first, I was like, oh, she's just I thought it'd be okay, fun. I'd be like, okay, I'll be the guy that kills things. Man, when you get her cross out, that
Mhm.
thing does work.
Yeah, it does.
Because any of those rats, any of those acolytes that spawn in an empty location, Zoe
Mhm.
basically walks in, looks at them funny, they die, and then she keeps on walking. Right? Like if it's an empty room, she walks in, they engage her,
Mhm.
and then they just die, and then she keeps on doing whatever she was going to do.
Mhm.
It's
Or she's just the best cut-in artist ever. Because if you walk into another room and an enemy is engaged with your teammate, all you do is
mhm.
just tap him on the shoulder and cut in, and ah! Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, good Wilhelm scream. That was nice.
yeah. Thank you. And 3, what essentially amounts to probably 3 combat pips. That's all
Mhm.
right. That's all right.
Yeah, I never throw her cross for the pips.
That's
Like it
that's
is
fair.
just
That's fair. I
it
feel
is
like
too
it's
good.
it's one of the better signatures out there. It's cheap. It's in a
Mhm.
slot that's not highly contested.
Especially in
Um,
Guardian.
yeah, especially in Guardian. I mean, there might be a build of Zoe where you leverage her high willpower and maybe you go for Rosary for spells or whatever. But I honestly don't think that's Zoe's
Maybe.
best build at the present. But
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just, anyway, the cross is amazing. Play it. Um,
Mhm.
Now the thing about, and we talked about this when we talked about Roland back in episode 1. But tanking takes on kind of a different concept in this game. Just the way that enemies
Mhm.
interact with players. Like I'm not even sure tanking is a thing in this game. I'll just say that at this point. I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
that is a separate conversation, I think.
Yeah.
My point being, that's a whole
Let's not
podcast
go down that
episode.
rabbit hole.
Yeah, yeah. My point being that even though tanking whatever is whatever, she actively wants to engage enemies. So that right there, and in my kind of baseline definition of tank, is tanky. They are mitigating the threat of the enemies to their fellow investigators and drawing that aggro.
Mhm.
Um, she's got better she's got better sanity to do it. She's sitting at a nice 6 as opposed to Roland's 5, which God, how often is that a liability for Roland?
Yeah.
It's pretty rough.
It's surprising how much just moving from 5 to 6 is somehow significant. I still felt a bit pressured with Zoe with
Mm-hmm.
her sanity,
Mm-hmm.
but not as much as Roland. But it
Right.
was close.
Yeah, I think between the higher willpower and the higher sanity, she just kind of has a baseline that's well above Roland's baseline for protecting that sanity.
Hmm. Well, I think one thing as well is that a lot of the treacheries in the deck, you test willpower, and if you don't pass, bad things happen. Sometimes taking some sanity hits,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't fail as often
Sanity
with
hits. We also call
Zoe.
that horror.
Yes, horror. Um, yeah, I didn't feel as much, and I think that maybe made me feel like she was more resilient. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she can
So,
fell a beast, and it might also just be that the Guardian pool has expanded, and I honestly have not played Roland since the core-only environment. I actually have a Dunwich campaign sitting in my box, ready to go for the next time I sit down to play with Roland and Wendy. But anyway, yeah, I really like Zoe. I think she's very well defined as a very proactive monster killer.
mhm.
I think that makes her a little tricky in solo. With 2 intellect, clue acquisition's a problem.
Mhm.
Some people have kind of built in, so obviously you go flashlight, you probably pump in perceptions to try to pull that up.
Couple
Um,
evidences.
yeah, a couple of them. Maybe you use her splash. Look what I found. Wouldn't be a
Mhm.
terrible one, but I honestly think some of her best splash is Drawn to the Flame, which I hear
Yeah.
is the name of a weird podcast or something.
Some guys, they're
Yeah,
across the pond though.
yeah.
So
I mean, yeah. But Drawn to the Flame, because okay, so my initial Zoe build coming off of obviously being an obvious Agnes fan, I was like, hey, let's build a spell slinging Zoe because she's got that high willpower. Let's play with it.
yeah,
So I went a Rosary, and then I went 2 Shrivelings and 2 Rites of Seeking to help out with investigation,
yeah,
and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that build, but honestly, I think Rite of Seeking is a bad play for Zoe in solo, or maybe even up to 2-player, because it's a big hit tempo wise to get 4
yeah,
resources down. And in a lot of cases, you're not even going to be getting 2 clues off a location. Sometimes it's just going to be the one, especially since you're probably not going to be the dedicated clue gatherer. And in solo, all the clue counts are lower anyway. So
yeah.
yeah, Drawn to the Flame is better because you just bypass that test completely, as you well know. And
Mhm.
okay, if she pulls an enemy, great. Zoe wants the
Yeah.
enemies. And if she pulls a treachery, she's generally pretty well positioned as far as an investigator can be to deal with them.
Yeah, no, that's a really
Excepting
good point. I
Agnes.
mean, she's good at handling what the encounter deck can throw at her. She's kind of got the two most used skills for dealing with the encounter deck.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the high willpower and the high combat. So I can see that. What do you think of her weakness?
Her weakness, yeah. So let's talk about Smite the Wicked. So it's another situation where it's almost like cover up, kind of in a
Hmm.
way. I don't know, in as much as any of these weaknesses that make you go seek them out. But yeah,
Easier
it's
than cover up though.
right. Well, maybe. The problem is with these kinds of you have to go resolve it type weaknesses, as opposed to like the hey, this hits you and then it goes away type weaknesses.
Mm.
Oh, this is a task. It's a task weakness. There you go.
Yeah, there
Thank
you
you,
go.
developers, for using smart traits. So yeah, with these task weaknesses, timing is everything. If it hits early game, fine. But it's kind of a thing where when it becomes a threat to your game state is when you draw it like mid to late game and you're not well positioned to deal with it. I think this
Yeah.
gets worse obviously the bigger the map, because the farther she's got to traipse around the map to go kill this
Mm.
thing, because you really don't want to suffer that mental trauma. As we were discussing, that's a thing.
Yeah.
What do you think?
And well, and Walker of Tales posted in the chat too, like, oh no, someone's to kill an enemy? Oh my goodness. I mean, people can help you with this, right? Because it's the farthest from Zoe. So she may be on the other side of the map, and then the enemy spawns next to, I don't know, Roland, right? And he's like,
Sure.
oh, that guy? Bang, right there.
Yeah. And you can
Um,
kind of kajigger it a little bit too, because depending on how many players you have and where they're
mhm.
positioned, there might be a couple of equidistant locations that are farthest from Zoe, and you can position it closer to one of your pals who can go take it out.
Yeah. I mean, it has the possibility of whiffing, which is
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Low chance, but it can.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the fact that other people can help you with it a little more easily than some of the other ones, I think it's great. I think it's easier than Roland's because Roland you need to have a location with clues,
Yep.
and in some scenarios you get halfway through the scenario and just clues aren't a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas enemies just kind of always are.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you draw something like rats, she literally walks into the room with her cross and she gets rid of her weakness. So I mean, there have been some horror stories. I keeping away from spoilers, but Wizard of the Order
Mhm.
on a long map
Yeah, that's
where
a
you can't
thing.
get to one end of the map quickly is apparently a really bad ride.
Well, to
So,
that end,
mhm.
so in addition to Drawn to the Flame, one of my highest suggestions for Splash for Zoe right now would be a copy or two, depending on how important it is to you, of Elusive, because that
Yeah,
card can save you so many move actions to pop into the location
yes.
next to the enemy and then go in and kill it. Or, you go kill it and then you zap back to whatever location you need to be at to resign or whatever else is going on. But yeah, I don't know.
Mhm.
I in my plays with Zoe, I've not found this to be consistently a terrible issue. I think even when it shows up mid game, quite often it's not that hard to go kill the thing.
Yeah, and same here. I mean, the times I've drawn it, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm more sad that I missed out on a single card draw because I drew this, more so than the fact of like, oh, now I have to go kill something because I'm like, well, I was gonna go there and kill something anyways, probably. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's just
All
asking
right.
you to do what you're probably doing anyway. So,
Yeah, exactly. So
so one other thing I wanted to point out, which is just kind of a funny quirk of the card pool at the moment, is due to her picture and kind of her backstory. I think most people who want to play Zoe thematically, um,
mhm.
want to put the machete on her because she's obviously a fan of edged weapons.
Yeah.
But I would argue that even though I love Machete, if you're playing Zoe to be kind of that engage things tanky person, then Machete is a bad fit for Zoe.
Yeah, I think you can.
I think you dual wield in a best case scenario.
Yes,
Um, but I don't know.
I would still pack two machetes,
Oh yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I am looking for a machete and a 45, or maybe a shriveling or something else, right? To
Mm-hmm.
when a machete doesn't work.
Yep.
But
I like that you kind of have
yeah,
to diversify your weapons. I hope that the design of weapons in this game kind of continue along that path. It'll be interesting
yeah,
to see. Anyway, I like Zoe.
yeah, I do too. She was more fun than I thought she would be.
Yeah, she seems like so entirely straightforward, but
Yeah, I'm like, this is gonna be boring. I'm just gonna be the
yeah.
guy who just punches things, right? And I was
Yep.
like, oh no, she's a total badass.
Yeah,
So,
there's actually some playing to be done. All
so
right.
speaking of melee weapons,
Yes.
would you like to grace over Blackjack?
Why, yes, Captain Segway, I would. Please continue what
I'm
you're
really
doing.
good at those. I don't know if you can tell.
All right, so Blackjack is, of course, a Guardian asset. It is one cost, level 0, has one combat pip, the item, weapon, and melee traits, and has action fight. You get +1 combat for this attack. If you perform this attack against an enemy engaged with another investigator and you fail, deal no damage. So it's kind of like Knife that you can't, it turns off friendly fire.
Yeah.
And you can't throw it.
Uh, yeah.
I
And
personally don't know where this weapon belongs. Um, it's
I think
interesting.
it belongs in the binder. Um, to be quite frank.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see the argument for one in Zoe because there's a lot of enemies that have 2 health, and if you no, but even that, like I mean, so I was thinking you go into a room, you engage it, you do one with the cross, and you can blackjack it, but then they wouldn't be engaged with somebody else. I don't know. It seems I can't even try to think of it. Like maybe in a 4-player game where you're running around smacking things, but you're still not doing extra damage. I think
Right.
that's the issue.
Yeah, that's the big thing, and I'm finding more and more again, and we've talked about it a billion times at this point. But when I'm slotting a weapon in my deck, it's to compress the action it would take to get extra damage into one action. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would prefer if this was no bonus to fight and +1 to damage. Like that would be preferable. The
Yeah,
damage is way more valuable than the fight bonus. So yeah, I don't know where this goes. Like I want to like it, and I like the theme of it that it's not a deadly blow, but
yeah.
I just don't know who takes this. I don't know who
I
would
think
take this because the problem is like it's weak. It's one cost and it's level 0, so it deserves to be a little weak, but it's still
yeah.
super weak.
It is perfectly costed. I think we can agree with that. Um, I think that going on the action compression point you mentioned,
hmm
this would be something. So I don't know, someone like Daisy has a rat or an acolyte engage with her, and you don't have Zoe's crossbow. You can walk over, hit it once, probably kill it without having to waste the action of engaging. And if you do happen to like pull tentacle token, you're not gonna hit a really fragile ally.
Man,
But
I wanna play with teammates who actually take the health of their compatriots into account when doing a fight test. Like everyone I play with is just like, here I'm going, duck.
oh wow, yeah, no, no. Here in Canada, we think about other people's health.
All right.
Uh, yeah,
I don't really have much else to say, sadly. If there's ever
yeah, no, either.
maybe an investigator who gets a bonus for melee weapons, maybe, but still, I mean, the machete is just so much better than this card.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I have nothing more to say. I
yeah,
can't. There's,
fair enough.
all right.
Sorry, Blackjack. You were one of my favorite weapons in the old Thief games.
Yeah. Oh, thief. That was
Oh,
good.
Thief. All
All
right,
right.
well, maybe we should come together for this next card there, Scott.
All
You wanna
right. Well, I'll do some teamwork. Oh wait, I messed it up.
I've heard it's
So
dangerous to go alone.
we should take this.
Yes.
All right. Teamwork is teamwork is a guardian event. It's a tactic. Cost of 0. A single wild icon. And it says investigators at your location may give or trade any number of item assets, ally assets, or resources among one another. Well, really bad in solo.
Well, unless
A
you
true
are
solo, not that
really a fan
two-handed
of like the
stuff. You
self high five.
yeah, just I play for the wild icon. Sean.
Yeah, this one's
Um,
interesting. Um, I've like I mentioned, I've not played a whole lot of Guardian since Dunwich came out. I've played mostly Zoe, and really only
mhm.
2-player with Zoe. I've played with a Zoe at higher than 2 players, but I don't know. I feel like is this a general purpose card that you just put in on the off chance that someone's going to have something that someone else wants, or do you put this in as like a planned addition to a coordinated pair of decks?
I
I
could
don't know if
maybe
you.
see it would have to be a coordinated pair because I
Yeah.
don't think you go to a game night where you're like, oh, I'm going to bring this deck. Okay, I'll bring this deck, and you're not coordinating. You know, like you're just everyone's bringing their favorite investigator.
hmm
Um, Whenever I build decks, I build a deck with all the stuff I'm going to need. You know, I don't think, oh well, if someone gives me Leo, I can do like I'm not preparing for that.
hmm
Um, I can I could maybe see someone saying, you know, like you build a really super cheap Jenny deck, and right at the beginning of the game, you try and teamwork a bunch of resources off on somebody because you're going to make a bunch back over the game.
Sure.
Um, but and I also think, well, is there any cards that a certain investigator can't take that if they got a hold of would just be bonkers? And
hmm
nothing comes to mind.
Yeah. That's the thing is like the game does a really good job so far of at least limiting how crazy things can get with the slots, right?
Hmm.
And all the really powerful items. Well, a lot of the really powerful items seem to be, sequestered to those slots that are limited in scope anyway. Though it would be really cool to get Zoe a copy of Aquina, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know
but
that
would it?
it's coordinate your deck around it level of cool, but
That's the thing, right? Like, are you willing to have your survivor player or someone who can take Aquina,
hmm
put it in their deck, play it, you both meet up, use an action to play teamwork to then move for, like, is it worth all of that? I don't think so. And that's my issue with teamwork.
yeah, I
Like,
mean, I think this is just one of those cards that's I don't want to call it cute because that sounds condescending, but
it's
it's
fun.
yeah, there you go. It's more fun than anything else. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how efficient it is, and That being said, when the card pool gets big enough, there will probably be some crazy combo that you can do with this card. You know, if you've got enough investigators that can splash it and then get the right combination of a kit to one investigator, and they just become unstoppable or something like that. I don't know, but it's a
4
cool card.
cycles from now, someone's going to make a broken deck.
Yes,
and it's going to use
pair
teamwork.
of them.
Yes, a pair of broken decks. Yeah, and I mean the thing limiting it also to just item assets and ally assets. There's a lot of stuff like you can't give someone a talent that they need, or it's that kind of limits it as well. Like something like scavenging, right? You can't give someone scavenging. So
are most of Daisy's tomes items? Because that'd be pretty cool if you could get Daisy scavenging.
I'm pretty sure.
Don't look it up. Don't look it up.
No, I'm not.
Okay, good.
But a book is an item, you know.
Okay, right.
I think items usually fill a slot. Is the key.
Yes, I think that's true. Anyway, I don't know. This is one that I might slot in as a one of if I know I'm going to like a 4-player game, just in case, for fun's sake. It's for
the lull.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. I don't know. It's cool. I like it.
Yeah.
I like the design, but it's not like highly efficient or anything I'm screaming over. Yeah.
Cool. I have no clever segue for Taunt, so you're just gonna have to read it.
Well, am I? Should I read it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on, Sean. Can you read it? These are getting worse by the card.
They are. This is the first of possibly 6 videos tonight, so we better turn the heat up. Okay, so Taunt is a level 0 event, costs 1, it has willpower and combat pip. It is a tactic, and it is fast. Play only during your turn. Engage any number of enemies at your location. And it's probably fine to just hop into the level 2 one here.
Yeah, I think so.
So level 2 Taunt gains an agility pip, and everything else remains the same. Engage any number of enemies at your location. Draw 1 card for each enemy engaged in this way.
I still want to have that turn with a level 2 Taunt, where there's like 4-player game, there's like 4 or 5 rats or acolytes or little, and I just engage them all, and I get 5 resources and draw 5 cards. Because that would be amazing.
I've seen it happen. It's pretty glorious.
Oh,
the first time Nick played Dunwich, he played Zoe, and he had, I didn't think he got quite 5. I think he had 1 and pulled 3, or maybe he pulled all 4, but it was still significant and pretty awesome. So that said, couple different things that I think bear pointing out about these cards. Fast, so great. I think that's important for this card, because if you're going to spend an action to engage an enemy, why not just spend the action to engage the enemy? But at the same time, if you don't have to spend the action, then you have more actions left to deal with said enemies that you just engaged. So that's pretty good. And then as well, this gets around any additional... No, wait, this one does not get around additional costs of enemies, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, additional costs got ruled that if you come across it, you must pay it.
There it is.
Like, there's no... Yeah. They got rid of all the Duke shenanigans and stuff, so... Sad face.
Yeah, it was cool for that month where you could engage the Rougarou without having to have any clues.
Yeah, or sniff your way through an arcane barrier. Or investigate an Ornn library, only use stuff. Yeah. Those were the days.
Yeah. So this is interesting, though. We were talking about tanking with Zoe at the top, and we'll probably talk about it on the podcast at some point as a concept, but this is a tanky ability. This is, hey, pull all that garbage off of everyone else and bring it over here, presumably because I can deal with it really well. Go on.
I think the key, fast is the word that means the most to me on this card, especially the level 0 card.
Yeah.
Just because how often have you been one space away from your compatriot, and you're like, okay, I need to move over, engage the enemy so I don't kill Daisy, and then hit him twice.
A lot of times, Scott. A lot of times.
Millions, pretty much every time.
Almost
Like
all
you're
times.
never in the same location. It's just everyone splits
All
the party.
all the times.
Yeah, and that's the key one to me. And Zoe's got a lot of health. A lot of the Guardians have a lot of health, not so much sanity. But a lot of those enemies, like mobsters or whatever, some of them don't hit for sanity. So maybe you can tank a round of enemy attacks and you just taunt and engage as many as you can, and just
Mm-hmm.
kill as many as you can, and then just eat the damage
Well, and
later
you're
on.
you're talking exactly about what I would consider to be a tank. I
Yeah.
it's got to exist at higher player counts. I only have probably about 10 4-player games under my belt. But yeah, I don't know that I play level 0 taunt very often. I think I threw it in my first Zoe deck just because I wanted to see how it played. It's fine. It does save you an action, and she's not shy about spending resources. You get it back for engaging the enemy anyway, so this is basically
Hmm.
free.
Yeah. Quote unquote. Yes.
Yeah, right. Free, except for the cost of including it in your deck. But I have taken level 2 taunt a couple times. I think that with Zoe specifically, the fact that if you can even engage 2 enemies off of this, you're netting a resource and 2 cards for 1 action, and that's pretty solid.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
I like
Level
them.
two taunt. Level two taunt is where it's at, I think,
Yeah.
and I think it's a decent card even in non Zoe decks. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be Zoe. Anyone who's playing that more combat-y role, that tanky role, totally an awesome card.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and
I
I
think I think better in like 3 to 4 player
yes.
than
I was actually going to
two.
make that comment about all of these cards. I think the entire Guardian set here is so
Mhm.
multiplayer focused. It's kind of unfortunate for solo players. I mean, they're still usable in solo, but I feel like they get so much better in multiplayer because Zoe's so focused on being, a monster killer. She's not that great at anything else, and she doesn't have access. It's good that she has a splash, but she doesn't have a whole lot of access to stuff to make her good at those things that she's not good at. And all these cards are like, hey, if you're attacking another player, oh, if you've got other investigators at your location, if you've got
Mhm.
enemies at your location that aren't engaged with you, and guess what, guys? There aren't that many enemies that don't engage you when you're at the location. So chances are this is a multiplayer card.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Really, all these cards are not solo viable.
they're not good. I mean, you could play them, but I wouldn't recommend it.
No. Play for the wild pip. Hey,
No.
teamwork. Solo.
There are
High
certain
level.
scenarios, like if I were building a standalone deck for Rougarou, solo Zoe, I might pack Taunt. I might
Yeah,
pack
I
level 2 Taunt for that.
yeah, I could
Because
see
it
that.
saves you the action, at least, for engaging him.
Hmm. I could even see level zero taunt in Rougarou. I mean, like it's just that action, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You run over to the Rougarou, and then you don't have to waste the action engaging. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway,
all
Guardian's
right.
got a cool little set. So Scott, any parting thoughts on the very multiplayer focused Guardian set out of Dunwich Legacy?
Um, it's kind of showing me Guardians showing a bit more of their support side.
Mm-hmm.
Really, like you got the Blackjack hitting other enemies. You've got Taunt bringing in other enemies. You got Teamwork to give away all your hard-earned stuff. And he's got a good combat person. Um, Nothing crazy broken. Yeah, no, it was a good bunch of cards.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it there. So thanks for listening, guys. I normally go through my whole spiel of where you can find us, but guys, just Google us. From there, you'll find our Facebook, our Twitter, our Twitch, our YouTube, our other RSS feeds, and everywhere where you consume that content that we labor so hard to create. That got deep. Anyway, so we will see you next time on the Miskatonic AV Club. Bye bye.